Hey, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Just Listen to Yourself podcast with Kira Davis. I am your host, of course, Kira Davis. And this is a podcast where we take the talking points on typical hot button issues and we draw them out to their logical conclusion. Because I think that sometimes when we take the time to examine what we're saying, we're not always saying what we think we're saying. Does that make sense? I read a really interesting article earlier this week about the death of thought and how when thought dies, it's really easy for governments to come along and make decisions for the people that aren't necessarily the best decisions, but that people will just go along with. And we're kind of going through that right now with our COVID lockdowns. And there is an argument to be made that, you know, the people in government aren't always the smartest people in the room. And why have we decided to kind of acquiesce our thought process to them? I understand that there's an idea of what the experts know, and these people have access to information that we don't have access to. Most of them don't. Well, almost all of them don't. All of this information is readily available to you through the government's own site by law. So there's not that much secrecy with, say, the health information that's out there. It's there to find. You've got to dig it up. But it's there to find. But it shocks me that people so easily concede their autonomy in thought to a government official simply because they have a government title. Again, that doesn't mean you don't have to take what they're saying seriously, or, you know, that maybe you have thought about it and the decision you've made is to trust them. But like, for instance, I was talking to my beloved mother for Mother's Day. And she lives up in Canada, and they've been doing harsh lockdowns. And she lives on an island. They've had 27 cases and 27 recoveries. But my mom is still convinced they need to lock down for the next 18 months. Because they got to just stay locked down until a second and third wave comes. My mom is a senior, and she's on a pension, so she's not necessarily worrying about what else it's killing, you know, what else lockdowns are killing. She's got a specific point of view. Now listen, here's the thing that's interesting. My mom's a hippie. She's a boomer. Man, she was one of those, like, ironed her hair and had bell bottoms, and she was a rebel, and she was an artist, and she was like, you know, F the man, F the government. That's the mother I knew. That's the person I knew growing up. So it was really weird to hear her say she was sad because it was Mother's Day, and the chief surgeon or doctor or whatever on the island, who's been setting all of the policy for their lockdown procedure, said, okay, well, it's Mother's Day, so today is the one day you can get out and hug somebody. You can hug one person. She gave them, quote, permission to hug one person, which my mom takes very seriously. So she was going to go hug my brother who lives down the street. But my brother had other things going on that day. He wasn't going to be able to see her. And she said, well, it made me sad because this was my one day to hug somebody. And I'm not going to get to hug anybody. And my first thought was like, okay, well, what's the difference between you like, okay, first of all, if you want to be so hardcore into this that you're going to let a total stranger tell you who you're allowed to hug and not put any thought into the transmission or of this disease or the science behind it or the science behind the curve being flattened, if you don't want to find any comfort in that, that's fine. That's your choice. But what is the difference between you hugging him on Sunday and you hugging him on Wednesday? If you can only get one hug in, if you're going to follow that weird advice, you're only allowed by government to hug one person. What's the difference if it's Sunday or Wednesday? I was just so shocked. But no, it has to be today. This is what she said. She said we could do this today. I'm just so shocked it blows my mind. It really does. Because my mother and I are on opposite sides of the political spectrum. She's very liberal. She won't call herself liberal anymore, but she's very liberal. She's a socialist. She's a proud socialist. She's like a member of the Green Party. She's very into environment. She is your typical baby boomer hippie. And those are the people who are like, F the culture. We're the counterculture. And now they're the people who are like, okay, whatever government tells us to do, we're going to do. It's so weird that they've just given up that autonomy of thought over the course of these years. Again, I'm not really commenting on the direction she's taking her thought, because it takes all kinds of people in this world. And you know what this show is about. This show isn't about shaming people for their points of view, but rather kind of drawing out the logic of those points of view and pointing out the fallacies and sometimes the ridiculousness of them. And so she can believe whatever she wants. We have differing views on how serious this virus is and what the response needs to be. But I respect her fear. I just think it's so strange. This is not the person that raised me. That's not how she raised me. I mean, I am who I am today because of who she was when I was growing up. It was so strange how quickly she just flipped to, I'm going to put all of my faith and trust in this person. And I'm not even going to really draw out the logic of what this person told me. There's no difference if I hug my son on Sunday or Monday morning, but the person said Sunday, so that's what I got to stick to. So I think the article I read was it was really good food for thought, because it was about how it's kind of one of the goals of any authoritarian government is to get the people to stop thinking. Now, I'm not talking about like, wake up people, you're sheeples, put on your tinfoil hat. And, there's plenty of conspiracy people out there who are like, well, I'm the only one who knows the truth. It's my job to tell everyone that the moon is hollow. No one understands, like, I've got this secret. No one understands about chemtrails. Very few of us are smart enough to understand. I'm not saying that. I'm not guiding you to like start proving that America blew up the World Trade Center. I'm asking you to put thought into some of the propositions, because what the government does is they tell us you don't need, not just the government, but any kind of wealthy authority, right? This is a class issue and government is a class. Any kind of authority will say, I've got the experts. You can stop thinking. You can stop thinking now because I've got this expert. They have expert behind their name. That's all you need to know. And therefore you don't need to question or even evaluate any of this information. You can simply accept that this is an expert. And I think that's dangerous. I think that's gotten us into a lot of trouble politically. It's gotten us into a lot of trouble socially and culturally. It's time to get back to thinking, people. Start using your brain. It's okay. Again, I would like to point out that maybe after you've done your thought and your examination exercises and you've read competing points of view, perhaps you just have come to the same premise that you started with. And that is perfectly fine. The exercise, the value is in curiosity, not in the conclusion. So I would like to tell all you people that you are perfectly capable of being one of those smartest people in the room. All the information is available to you. And just because someone has has that expert title behind their name doesn't mean that in turn you know nothing. You didn't go to school as long as they did, and you might not know the chemical process by which cells divide or die, but you understand the concept of it, so you're not helpless in your thought process. Don't easily acquiesce that to other people just because they're in authority and just because they're wealthy. It is incumbent upon all of us to be thinkers, to be curious in some way or another. And as long as you're honestly curious, then the conclusion you come to is your own, and I think it's legitimate. As long as you're honestly curious. And that's how I raised my son. My son's 18. He's getting ready to leave this house, please God. And my thing is, like, I'm not going to tell you what to believe politically. I don't care if you decide you're progressive or conservative or liberal or Republican, whatever. But I just want you to always do your own thinking and don't be incurious. Always be curious. Okay, so that's why we do this show. So today we've got this isn't necessarily an argument for a concept or a certain issue, which we do. I did wealth versus charity last week, and I've done abortion and I've done homeschooling. But I want to talk about Ahmaud Arbery, the young man in Georgia who was shot and killed by two white men who allegedly ambushed him and eventually shot him to death. And there's a lot of controversy surrounding this case. I laid off talking about it for a few days because I've been on this merry-go-round before, right? This is not my first rodeo. And I know that we get caught up in feelings and emotions and tensions, and we all make judgments about things, and then, the facts come out or more information comes out, and it turns out we're really wrong about everything. Been burned too many times. I've seen this before, especially when it comes to racially sensitive issues. So I backed off. I didn't want to get involved until I knew what happened. So, as I was telling my friend Chris Arps today, it is the cowardly op-ed writer who does not have an opinion, does not render an opinion. And this is a hot topic. There's a lot of debate going on around it. And so it's not fair of me to stay silent. One of the people who's not staying silent about this issue is Candace Owens. She has been tweeting about it, and some of her tweets have been pretty controversial. And it's caused a bit of a divide in the Black conservative community. And now I'll tell you this. I generally don't talk about Candace because I'm a Black conservative, and clearly she's a Black conservative, and she has come to represent Black conservatives. What I have found, and I don't like to get political on this show, but I'm going to have to do it for this one. I'm going to have to. So forgive me, but I'm going to try to just keep it all in context. All right. I'm not trying to change your politics or anything. I'm just trying to explain what's going on this side of the fence. So being a Black conservative, you get a lot of hate. It's not unusual. All of us get the hate mails. House nigger. That's a very popular one. Uncle Tom, coon, sellout, self-hating Negro. There's a list, and people go down it. And I think we've all learned to accept that it kind of comes with the territory, particularly if you're a public figure. And a lot of us just don't complain about it because it's not worth it. It is what it is. So a lot of us have been here for a while, and we've been taking the slings and arrows. Well, a lot of us didn't care for Candace's rise to the top. Not that she rose so quickly. I actually used to watch Candace when she only had a YouTube channel, and I think she called it like Red Pill Black or something like that. She dropped like funny little 5-minute videos, and there were little commentaries, and I thought, I like this girl. These are fun. And this is a great new young conservative, Black conservative coming up. And she's got a lot of interesting things to say, and sometimes I would share her stuff. And then what happened was, Kanye West retweeted her, and then it just turned her into this overnight sensation. Even Kanye had to back off. Even Kanye wasn't comfortable with the level of authority she was given all of a sudden at a young age. And she was taking some liberties with it in regards to their relationship. It's my opinion that she was just young and she had never been in that situation. So she got overzealous, but it scared him and he backed off, which is which is fine. Whatever. That's how we ended up with Candace Owens being the queen of Black conservatives, even though she'd been a conservative for like 12 months. I've been doing this job for 10 years and I'm one of the youngsters in the game. So it was just odd to see that. And at first it was nice. At first I was excited because I thought, okay, this is great. This is great publicity for the idea of Black conservatism. Maybe I'll do a different podcast on why I'm conservative. I don't want to get into those weeds right now, but I want you to know that it only has to do with uplifting our people and with wanting more prosperity for the Black community. So please just take my word on it for now. And then I promise I'll explain it later because I'm just trying to do this one issue here. Just please let me argue in good faith. That means just take what I'm saying with all good intentions. So it was very concerning. But at first it was like, okay, well, that's cool. She seems energetic. Trump loves her. And, anything Trump touches turns to gold. So this is a great voice for the community. But I began to wonder as I would watch her tweet and listen to her talk, who is she talking to? Who is she trying to convince? Because she'd make a post, and this is the thing that people don't like about her. She'll make a post talking about how this is the Democrat plantation, and we got to walk off the plantation. We're slaves on a plantation, and the Democrats don't want to free us slaves. I'm familiar with that rhetoric. It's not new. It's a narrative that even some of us used many years ago, but not to talk to black people, to talk to white liberals who were trashing us, and kind of make a point. But it was never meant as it was, first of all, it was never meant as a permanent explanation for anything. When we first started in this community, we had to make the case for why we weren't voting Democrat, why we weren't self-proclaimed liberals. And so some visuals made sense. But eventually we came to the point where we were like, we've got to move to persuasion. Okay, now we've made the case. Like, this is what, you don't own our brains. You don't own us. You don't own how we think. We've made the case. We're moving on to persuasion. Now we want to come and take as many minds into the land of curiosity as possible. Not trying to save anybody, not trying to save black people. It's not our job to save black people. That's infantilizing, right? Black people can... We've been doing it all this time. We can do it. But just trying to share and trying to encourage people to be curious, and then try to encourage people to not sell their vote to the highest bidder and then have no stake in any other party in the country. And right now we're a two-party system. It doesn't make sense for us to have stake in only one party. I'm starting to get into the conservative thing, and that's not what I want to do. What I want to say is the problems that I have with Candace is I would look at her tweeting and I'd be thinking, who is she talking to? All of my white conservative friends love Candace. Almost all of them love Candace. And they always say, oh, she's working so hard for the black community. And this is the one that I can't hardly deal with. She is the modern day Harriet Tubman. We need to stop. Stop. Harriet Tubman is rolling over in her grave. No, she's the modern day Harriet Tubman. She's really, doing a lot for the black community and really bringing the conservative message to the black community. And I'm looking at her timeline and I'm seeing her tweet stuff like black folks have the worst crime rate. Black on black crime is the problem. Y'all are slaves on a plantation. We need to break these chains. And it's no wonder that there's so much crime in the black community. It's no wonder everything was negative about the black community. She never had anything good to say about the black community. And so she wasn't talking to them. But if you read under the comments, you read the responses, it's 150,000 responses from white people, right? Saying, this is absolutely right. You're a leader, blah, blah. It's all white people. So I and other black conservatives question who she's speaking to. You got to know your audience. Now, listen, maybe who she's speaking to is white people. That's what I think. I don't think she's interested in having a dialogue with in the black community and really trying to convince people of her positions and make her ideas kind of more palatable, and maybe have a discussion about how we lift up the black community, how we solve some of our own problems, how we can dig out of some of the messes that we are in, either by our own devices or that have been thrust upon us. I don't know that she's interested in that. That's not where the money is. And so I don't know, maybe her audience is white people, and that's fine. I just don't know that then the narrative of her being some kind of modern day social media Harriet Tubman really fits. So do you understand about that narrative thing? Like, here's a great example. My friend Sunny Johnson is a commentator. She works for Breitbart. She's got a podcast, and she is a black conservative. And she's really probably one of the smartest women I've ever met in my life. And I mean that. I don't know you'll meet many women who are smarter than Sunny Johnson. She can argue her way out of a paper bag. She knows so much about so much. But we are very different. I mean, Sunny is straight like urban. She's not Republican. I guess I'm not Republican either, but she's a conservative. She's like a hood conservative. You know, she is straight, like she will tell you like what it is. She is fighting for the black community. She is talking to other black people and explaining to them why the principles of lower taxes and business ownership and home ownership will lift you up out of where you are no matter what you're doing, and how government intruding on those things, it's never been a help. The government, that the help that government gives us has never really been a help, and the proof is in the pudding. Because how much has changed for the majority of black people. So she has this really fierce and outspoken message, and she directly targets black listeners because she wants to lift up the community. I'm different than Sunny. First of all, I'm biracial. I grew up in Canada. I grew up in splitting my time between rural and urban, and in between black and white. Our experiences as black women are very different. Our views about what needs to happen in the black community, a lot of those are the same, but our experiences are very different. When I tweet, a lot of times I am talking to white people. I am. Not that I don't have anything to say to black. I mean, to black people, I talk to black people every day. I live in a house full of them. So it's not that I don't have anything to say. It's that my experience as a biracial black woman who also has had the privilege of living in 2 different countries and then also living all across this country, I feel like I have a unique voice to add to the conversation. And sometimes I feel pressed to help people understand the language that black people speak. Because black people can understand white language, and you have to understand, I don't mean the words, but your cultural language. And a lot of what we call racism today, I am deeply, deeply, deeply convinced is really just it's a difference in culture. We don't understand it. So we label it racism. But I like to help, my white friends and listeners and family understand the language that we speak in the black community, and what it is that people are really saying, and what it is that people are really getting at, and what to them looks strange or funny is actually a part of a cultural history for us. So a lot of times when I'm tweeting, I am tweeting at those people. So I know my audience. I think Candace does know her audience too. I just think her audience doesn't know her audience. All this has spent a lot of time on Candace Owens, and I'm sorry. And I'm sorry, Candace, by the way, because Candace is young. She's very young. I think she's 30. Is she even 30? She's very young. She's going to grow up just like I did. I said and did all kinds of stuff that I'm embarrassed about and that I wish I could take back. I've learned a lot of lessons. I've learned a lot of lessons about how to serve people, how to serve my community. So I'm not above any of this stuff. So I don't want it to seem like that. But I just want to try to explain to you, leading up to this discussion of Ahmaud Arbery, why it is such a problem that she's the one that people try to let speak for us. And there's only so much room on the conservative side for black commentary. There just is. Is it racism? Is it cultural? Is it just money issue? Is it that the conservative side of media is much smaller than the liberal side? I don't know. I have no idea. But it's like Hollywood, right? Where you only get one black it guy, and he plays all the roles until that guy moves on. You get Samuel Jackson, he plays everything until Will Smith comes along. And you get Will Smith, and then he plays everything until Chad Boseman comes along. You know what I mean? Or Idris Elba. You just only get a couple of those roles. And that's how it is in black conservative media. And so, but there are so many more voices out here. There's so many more of us who just kind of do the day-to-day thing. We're small potatoes, and that's fine. The goal isn't to become famous. The goal is to be influential and persuasive. So it's weird to have Candace be speaking for us, and she just came out of nowhere, and she doesn't know hardly any of us. All of the OG black conservatives out here, all of the old school folks that have been doing this forever, she doesn't know any of us. We haven't sat down to talk. There's no, I'm friends with most of the Black conservatives in the commentary sphere. We know each other. We talk offline. We chat, we gossip, we share our experiences. These things happen. I don't have that connection with Candace. She doesn't have that connection with anybody. And that's just because she just appeared. And then the other thing that happens is that I get a lot of happy emails from white conservatives who are really excited for me that Candace has influenced people like me so much because our side needs more people like you. I get a lot of those. When I complain, the few times I complain about it, people are like, oh, you're just jealous. I'm like, I'm not jealous. I'm 45 years old. I'm just saying that, like, this kid didn't, it's like the husband getting a new wife and then she's like, yeah, I raised these teenagers. You've been a stepmother for a year. So that's all I'm saying is we've always been uncomfortable with her speaking for us. But when we try to speak out and say, I don't agree with her, it's not her that she actually rarely attacks. It's not her that attacks. It's her followers. Her followers are the problem. So, and that gets frustrating. So with this whole Ahmaud Arbery thing, I'm sorry, I've spent almost a half hour complaining about this. I hope I've set it up for you properly, so that just so you know where I do feel comfortable speaking for a lot of my Black conservative friends on this issue, just so you know how uncomfortable we have felt. We've tried to speak out, but when you speak out, you get it from both sides then, right? Because you're already the house Negro to the liberals. They don't care. They'll throw you to the wolves. And then the red staters, are like, well, you're just jealous. Why can't you kids just all get along? You're all fighting the same enemy. Just stop sowing divisiveness between yourselves and start fighting the left. And it's like, we're grown-ass adults. We're having a discussion. We're having a disagreement. I don't need mommy and daddy spanking us to get us in line. Give me a break. It's frustrating is what I'm saying. So to see Candace tweeting about Ahmaud Arbery, I don't believe that Candace believes he thinks that he should have died. I don't think that at all. But her every tweet was about how it was really his fault and how he is the criminal and how everything was a defense of the white man who shot this Black kid, and nothing even recognized that this kid was a human being and that his life was lost and that people were missing him. He wasn't even in the equation. And to me, as a human being, that's abhorrent. And as a Black woman, it's reprehensible. She's not a mother yet, and it might change when she becomes a mom. Because I'll tell you what happened to me when I saw that video. And I think I started this story and then started taking a little... By the way, you guys, I'm sorry. So my neighbors right next door are really awesome people, and their kitchen window faces the driveway. We share a driveway, and they always have alcohol, and sometimes you just go up to their window and it's open, and if they're in the house, you'll just be like, shot, and they'll just give you a shot of tequila or something, pass it through the window for social distancing reasons. We call it the shot window. So I took a shot at the shot window before the podcast. So if I sound a little rambly, that's why. If it's taking me a while to get back to my ideas, that's why. I'm so sorry. But I think one of the original ideas I was getting at here was I did not right away watch the video, because I understood that this can all get out of hand and everyone can get emotional and there's probably a lot more information to come out. So I finally sat down and watched the interview because, as I was saying, it's a cowardly op-ed writer who doesn't render an opinion. I expected to see something ambiguous, right? It's happened in the past. And believe me, I spent a lot of time with my head in the Trayvon Martin case and the Mike Brown case, and there were all kinds of facts that came out on both sides that really made the stories questionable. So there were legitimate questions to be asked there. And I kind of thought that that's what I was going to get with this video, to be honest with you. And when I watched it, it gave me chills. It made me sick to my stomach because I saw my own son running there. And I thought to myself, what would he have done? What would he have done? would he would have run or he would have fought for his life. I saw my son being murdered. As cliche as that sounds, that's exactly what I saw. And I've only watched the video a couple of times. I can't bear it. It'll be for better people than me to really break it down. I could come to no other conclusion. And please understand that I have a wealth of experience with these things. And I know, beyond a shadow of a doubt, I know that the question you always have to ask is, what happened the moment before? Always. Because there's a lot of police shooting videos where you see and they're like, well, this is racially motivated. But when you get the whole video, you realize, oh, well, 2 seconds before, the victim was stabbing a police officer. We just didn't see it. It happens all the time. So I know that the moment before is what's important. But when I watched that video, I could come to no other conclusion than it was straight up murder. And it wouldn't have mattered what the moment before was. It really didn't matter. This is a case of a young man who was out and 2 white men who ambushed him and shot him in cold blood, in my opinion. All right, so let's break down what the problems with this case are real quick. And I'm going to use my colleague Jeff Charles's great piece over at Red State Today, the definitive debunking of the lies surrounding the Ahmaud Arbery shooting. And forgive me if I'm pronouncing his name wrong, but I don't listen to news anymore. I don't watch news. I only read. I find that's the best way to get straight information rather than be influenced by the tone of the broadcast or the tone of the broadcaster. I read everything. And then also because I'm online all day because of what I do for my job, it's just easier. It's easier for me to read a 1,200 word article than it is to sit through a 5-minute broadcast. It is. So I don't listen. I haven't heard anyone say these things out loud yet. So I haven't heard his name out loud. So I apologize. But I want to talk about the moment before, because this is one of the things that a lot of people are bringing up. And they're saying, well, hang on. He's no angel. These guys may have had a past with him. Furthermore, here's video of him scouting out a construction site. He may or may not have visited that construction site several times in the past. He may or may not have a criminal record. He may or may not have been known to steal things from around the construction site from time to time. And the father and son, the McMichaels, may or may not have had a run-in with him before. That's the moment before, Kira. So this isn't some innocent angel. This isn't an innocent angel that's running around. All right. Well, you know what? Let's take your point of view. Let's take that point of view and say, okay, and concede that you're right. I looked at the video. So far, it's the only video we have. And it's a guy, I guess it's him. I mean, the FBI says it's him. GBI, Georgia Bureau of Investigations, says it's him. So I'll take their word for it. So they say it's him. I see him poking around a construction site. I mean, maybe he looks suspicious because what else are you doing? But it's 3 minutes of him looking. I mean, it's not him picking things up and looking underneath them, getting on his hands and knees, trying to see if there's anything on the floor he can steal. He's not taking copper piping or stealing wire. He's not doing anything. He's just looking. So let's concede that he's looking, he's taking out the place. Let's just concede that. I'm not saying that's what he was doing, but for the sake of this argument, let's say that is what he was doing. He had absolutely every intention of robbing that construction site of whatever was there to rob. He leaves. At some point, he starts a jog or a run. Now, there's a lot of controversy. Was he jogging? Was he running from something? Y'all understand how crazy this is? That these are the considerations that Black people have to make. Will I look like I'm jogging or will I look like I'm running? So was he running or jogging? A lot of people say he was not jogging. He was running. He was in Timberlands. He was in baggy pants. He wasn't dressed for a jog. He wasn't dressed for a jog. Even though the video I saw, that was clearly a jog. That was not an all-out run. That was not I'm scared. That was not I'm running for my life. I'm running from the police. It was a jog. It was clearly a jog in my mind, but semantics. Okay. let's concede you're absolutely right. Those were boots he had on and not sneakers. He wasn't jogging. He was running. And he was running fast. Let's concede you're right about that. So we're conceding that you're right that he was staking this place out. And you're right that he was in boots and he was running, not jogging. He runs down the street and runs into 2 trucks with white men camped out in either truck holding rifles. And they're scouting him out. They're staking him out. He's running from whatever, the police or from whoever might see him in the construction site, and he's scared. He's running. He doesn't want to get caught. And he runs past these white guys, and they've got guns. And one of the guys, they're not in uniform. They got no markings. They're not military. They're not in police vehicles. There's nothing to identify them except their guns. And he's a black boy running by these 2 white men in Georgia with guns. And one of them says, stop. One of them says, we want to talk to you. Is this a reason to shoot someone, to assault someone? Given everything, I've conceded that he had bad intentions and conceded he was running from something. Under what authority do they have to stop him? Now they can, I know there's a lot. Here's another argument about citizen's arrest. And we can argue the ridiculous nature of what that means. Okay, fine, a citizen's arrest. They were going to make a citizen's arrest. As a citizen, you are under no obligation to follow a citizen's arrest. God, we'd be out there arresting each other all day, every day for everything if that were the case. If someone came up to me or like, you know what? You're outside walking and you don't have your mask on. I'm making a citizen's arrest. I'd be like, forget you. Bye. I would not take that person seriously. If they pulled out a gun, I'd do one of 2 things. Fight them or run. The last thought on my mind would be, oh, this person's simply making a citizen's arrest. They're just a good citizen and they want to bring me to justice. Please do point that gun at me and take me to the proper authorities. I am sorry for my transgressions. That's not what I'm thinking. Was that what you expected that young man to be thinking? How condescending is that? 2 white men had guns and they asked him to stop. He should have just stopped. What? Why? For what? Why would he have stopped? Well, he grabbed the gun, Kira. Yeah, he did grab the gun. I saw that part. That part is burned in my brain. I think that's the part where I was like, oh God. Because I didn't see a young man who was being aggressive. I saw a young man who was, I'll say jogging, who was jogging or running lightly, who came across 2 white men with guns who asked him to stop, who tried to go around them. He didn't go through them. He didn't threaten them. He tried to go around them. And they still became aggressive with him. And when he saw that gun, that was when he was either I'm going to fight or I'm going to run. And he chose fight. And he chose wrong. That's what I saw. There are no circumstances under which these 2 men had the authority to stop or threaten this young man in any way. None. So the question here has become, there are 2 questions that suddenly have been asked in this situation. One of the questions, which I find to be the least legitimate, is what was he doing at that construction site? He could be planning to kidnap the Queen of England in that construction site. He has due process as an American citizen. So he did not deserve to be hunted down and then shot. Whether or not he was struggling for that gun or not, if those guys aren't sitting there waiting for him to ambush him, he's alive to this day. So you can tell me all you want that he shouldn't have grabbed that gun, which is the craziest thing ever. I guess maybe he should have run. But the idea that he should have just stopped and surrendered to these total strangers who are not law enforcement in any capacity. Oh yeah, I know one had law enforcement experience, but I'm sorry, was he wearing a shirt? Was he wearing a hat? Did he identify himself as a police officer, which he wasn't anyway, but at least an identifier would have helped. Stop with that. Stop with it. They had no authority. He had no reason to respect that authority. Why would he ever see it as anything other than these people are threatening me and I'm scared? So that's one that I consider to be not a very legitimate question. What was he doing at the construction site? I'll get to that later. The other question is if Ahmaud Arbery were white would he be alive today? And I believe the answer is yes. I do. Not just because it's not because I think that America is just filled with these racists, and every time a black person walks out their house, they are in danger of being lynched or murdered by any number of the millions and millions of racist white people that walk all over America every day just looking to give it to us black people. I don't think that. Most of us are living peacefully beside each other with no problems. Most of us never really experience a frightening level of racism, like a bodily harm level of racism in our lives. So no, that narrative isn't true. And that narrative deserves to be pushed back against. That's a victim mentality. That's not true. But it's not like racism is dead. It's not like there's it's not like the perception of black people, particularly young black men, doesn't come with some uncomfortable realities that you might call bigotry, I might call racism. A young black man it doesn't matter if you think you're not racist. I doubt you're racist. Right? Know your audience. I'm imagining I'm talking to white people right now. I'm imagining you're not a racist. I'm pretty sure. That's the last thing I think when I meet a white person. I don't immediately assign the label of a racist to a white people. I know a lot of black people who do. That's just the reality. Oh, you're white, you've got to be a racist. You're a racist without knowing it. But I don't think so. I do think you can be prejudiced without knowing it. You might feel in your heart that you're envisioning this situation going down the same for a white boy as it did for the black boy. But what I'm saying is, if this kid is white, those guys aren't even parked in that spot in the first place. It's a different confrontation. It's a different solution to whatever their problem was. Maybe they find the dad and they go to the dad, or maybe it's not with guns. Maybe they just stand around and look threatening. A black man running down the street looks different than a white man running down the street. A black man climbing a fence into his own yard looks different than a white man looks climbing the fence into his own yard. I said this, I gave this example in another podcast. I was at an event. It was like a sporting event, like a big obstacle race. And then we were in the beer garden afterwards. There was a bunch of people. We're all wearing bandanas because you wear the colors of your team. It's a team effort. And there was some team that had one black guy on the team, and they were wearing red scarves. And someone made a joke about the black guy being like a Crip or a Blood, oh, you're part of a gang or whatever. And everybody laughed, and it was funny, and no one had any problems with it. It was fine. Like, all of you people out there whose hairs just got raised, like, calm down. It was fine. It was a joke. Everybody got it. We drank a lot of beer and we went on with our day. But the fact that joke was even made is evidence of an inherent bias. See, everybody was wearing the bandanas, but it wasn't the white guys that got the comment, that got the joke. Oh, Jerry, you look like a Crip in that red scarf. It was Jerome who got the comment. I'm gonna get in trouble for that too. Even though we all know black guys named Jerome, we're in this new SJW phase where we're not supposed to recognize the difference between people. Anyways, Jerome had the I didn't even talk to this guy. I don't know his name. I just remember this incident. And again, everyone was fine with it. It wasn't a big deal, but it does make you think about the perception that you would even perceive that about him to make the joke. Do you see what I'm saying? It's a subconscious perception of, you may think that you're seeing the same thing and that you would judge it the same way. But that is not what happens. That's not what happens in real life. And I know, and we all think that, because none of us want to think that we would be the person to judge a person by the color of their skin. None of us wants to be that person. But almost all of us are. Even black people. We do it to each other. We're not ignorant of, the problems we have in our own communities, or, especially if you live in an urban area, black, white, Chinese, whatever, everybody's suspicious. So we all do it in some capacity or the other. It doesn't have to be that you judge someone as a thug. Maybe you judge someone as a nerd. Maybe you judge someone as a stuck-up Republican or a spoiled brat social justice warrior based because, oh, well, she's a little white girl. Well, that's a black thug over there. We do that. We take our perceptions into our interactions, and that's what I think happened here. That's why I don't is Georgia teeming with racism? Maybe in some spots, but the state, no. Most people live their lives very happily next to each other with no incidents, just like happens every day across America. But this stuff does exist. And I believe that this young man did not deserve that treatment. And the only reason he was treated that way is because he was black. And as a matter of fact, the fact that it took so long to get that video out tells me that I'm right. And then when they released the video, they thought this was going to exonerate these two guys. And it made it worse. Absolutely not. I think that's the question. We're having a lot of arguments over, like, this is the other thing. People are like, why are they using the high school picture for him? You know, if he was such an angel, why are they using who the hell cares who the frick cares what picture they are using? This boy is dead. Do y'all hear? He is dead. He didn't come home that night, and his parents didn't even get any justice that night. There was nobody to answer for this crime. They lost their son. Black people love their kids just the way y'all do. They lost their son, and they did not get any kind of justice. There was nobody to. Okay, well, ma'am, we've arrested the perpetrators, or they're at least in custody. We're going to question. There was none of that. They hid the video. It was only the fact that this thing got leaked that this became any. So this whole family has been not even had any kind of justice. Whether or not you think this kid was up to no good before that, don't you think that there's at least a due process that should happen here for his sake and for the sake of the McMichaels? Right now, the McMichaels are getting their due process, and we should let that process play out. We should not judge what sentence they should get or the whole situation before they've had their day in court. But I would like to point out that they're getting their due process. And this young man got none. So it doesn't matter what he was doing the moment before. And it doesn't matter if the family yet lets the press use the high school photo, because maybe that's the one they love of him the most. Maybe that's the one he looks happiest in. And it doesn't matter if they wanted to use that one and not use one that might make you perceive him as a thug because you have ideas of what a guy in dreadlocks is doing. A guy in dreadlocks peeking through the empty slats in a construction site looks different to you than a white kid with a man bun doing the same thing. Admit it. Just take a minute, step back from the accusations and the notions and just think about that. I think you and I both, I think we both might look at those things a little differently. Now, do we recognize we're seeing them differently at the time? You know, that's a different thing, because it's nothing to be ashamed of. Human nature is nothing to be ashamed of. There are some kind of stereotypes and judgments that we have. That some are innate, some we're born with, some we grow up with. There's no shame in being a sinner. The shame is staying that way. I think we would have different judgments. So no, I don't think it matters what he was doing that moment before. I don't think it matters that he wasn't a saint. People want to bring up he brought a gun to a playground 7 years ago as proof of what? I don't know. I guess of proof that he is a bad actor, that he's a troublemaker. I don't know why we feel like we would bring that up. It has nothing to do with the fact that he was ambushed and he never got his due process and he fought for his life. And I think it's insane to think that he was supposed to stop and put his hands up. Do you know how degrading that is? Do you know how condescending that is? Hey, if you're running down the street and two white guys with guns tell you to stop and put your hands up and you're a black guy, you know, you should just do it. Meanwhile, 2 million white people in this country are protesting because the police are driving old men and women off the beach for daring to sit on the beach for a few minutes. Now you know what it's like. The indignancy. Is that even a word? Indignantness? It makes you feel indignant to be treated for just doing small things, just doing normal things, and the cops treat you like a criminal just for being someplace they think you're not supposed to be, even when you're doing nothing wrong. That's frustrating, isn't it? Now you're getting a taste of what it is for some black people, what that experience is like. This young man was supposed to stop Let me read some of Jeff's article here. He makes the best points. And also he wrote this article. I'm sure he didn't have a shot at the shot window before he wrote the article, so he's more prepared to talk about this. I'm sorry if it feels disrespectful to be taking a shot before a very serious subject, but it's still a podcast. Jeff says, as with most controversial news stories, the shooting of Ahmaud Arbery has garnered nationwide attention and sparked a fierce debate in the public square. It has also generated no small level of misinformation being disseminated about the incident. Some of these individuals seem to have all but dismissed the McMichaels' role in the incident and focused primarily on villainizing the young man whose life was taken under the guise of getting all of the facts. And that's what, sidebar here, this is why I have a real problem, and most of us black conservatives have a real problem with Candace. She's been villainizing the victim. We wouldn't accept that in any other circumstances. But those who are intent on smearing Arbery are building their case on falsehoods rather than actual facts. This piece will address the most common myths surrounding the matter. Much of the anti-Arbery smear campaign consists of an overall effort to convince the American public that he was not a jogger, but a malicious burglar, intent on pilfering the belongings of the residents of Satilla Shores. For starters, they argue that he was not wearing running shoes, as was pointed out by various news reports. Instead, they contend that he was wearing work boots. As proof, they center on a still shot of the footage of his encounter with the McMichaels that seems to show he's wearing heavy boots. These individuals argue that if he were truly a jogger, he would not be wearing this attire. If this young man is white, are we talking about the shoes he's wearing? I shall continue. However, the cameras in the construction site he entered shortly before his death show that he was indeed wearing running shoes. Moreover, the New York Post published an article discussing the autopsy report. The author explains that the report revealed Arbery was wearing a white shirt, tan cargo shorts, gray athletic shoes, and 2 bandanas, all of which were bloodstained. Another myth that was circulated on social media indicated that Arbery had been carrying a hammer that he stole from the construction site, which is owned by Larry English. Those making this argument claim that he threw the hammer shortly before his altercation with the McMichaels. They point to an object that was lying on the ground in the footage of the encounter as evidence. The grainy footage does show an object on the ground. However, nobody has proved that this item is a hammer. Moreover, a recently published YouTube video demonstrates that this particular object was already on the ground before Arbery reached the scene. So he could not have placed the item at that location. Finally, English told the Washington Post that nothing had been recently stolen from his construction site. So, nothing's been recently stolen. Is that a hammer on the ground? Again, if this young man is a white man, are we zooming and enhancing into objects on the ground to prove something that isn't even on the video? When the actual shooting is on the video, right? The actual shooting, that's what's on the video. But we want to make all kinds of conjecture about a supposed object on the ground and what was being done with it before. Even still, let's play the game of I concede. Let's play the game of I concede that Arbery threw a hammer at these guys. Why wouldn't he? If he had a hammer to throw, hell, he should have thrown it. Who are these guys to him? Again, I would like to point out, these aren't police officers. These are just 2 dudes. How the hell is he supposed to know that they're there to make a, quote, citizen's arrest? Next, we have the theory that Arbery entered the construction site on multiple occasions. At first, it was established that the young man went into the site shortly before his confrontation with the McMichaels. But later, it was reported that footage showed him going into the property multiple times in October of 2019. The anti-Arbery crowd was using this fact to support the theory that the young man was casing the house for a future burglary. However, ABC News revealed that the man who was entering the construction site in October was not Arbery. All right. Insert joke about all black people looking alike here. According to the report, English informed law enforcement that an unknown black male kept trespassing on the site and was captured in the surveillance camera footage. However, the suspect was described as a lighter-skinned black male, slender build, who stood between 5'10" and 6 foot, and whose arms may have been covered in tattoos and has a 3-inch to 4-inch twist or dread locked hairstyle. However, Arbery does not match this description. He's 6 feet tall with a dark complexion and a low fade haircut. Even a cursory examination of the video shows Arbery's build is distinctly different from the man who entered the property in October. The victim's mother affirms that it was Arbery who went into the site on February 23rd, the day of the shooting, but stated that the person who did the same in October was not her son. Neither of the men in question stole anything from the site. Okay? So whether or not these two black guys were casing out the site, nothing was stolen. Why don't they get their due process? Why is it your assumption that they're casing it out to steal something? Again, are we having this conversation? Are we asking these questions if it's a young white guy with a man bun? Finally, we have the citizen's arrest issue. Many on the right have defended the McMichaels' decision to pursue Arbery after they saw him running by their house, claiming they were exercising their right to a citizen's arrest. Sidebar, if he's running in your house, yeah. If he's running by your house, good gosh. Indeed, George Barnhill, the second district attorney to handle the case, wrote a memo in which he justified the two men's actions by claiming that they were trying to make a citizen's arrest on a burglary suspect. He was later compelled to recuse himself from the case after Arbery's mother pointed out that his son worked in the same office as the elder McMichael, who was a retired police officer and investigator. It was clear that Barnhill had no intention of investigating or seeking an arrest of the two men. But Georgia law indicates that a citizen's arrest can only be made under narrow circumstances. Not that we need to know this, because the whole situation is like, you shouldn't even have to know the law of a citizen's arrest to understand why this black guy would not stop for two random white guys with a gun. But here it is. The law reads, a private person may arrest an offender if the offense is committed in his presence or within his immediate knowledge. If the offense is a felony and the offender is escaping or attempting to escape, a private person may arrest him upon reasonable and probable grounds of suspicion. At most, Arbery's presence in the construction site constitutes trespassing, which is considered a misdemeanor, not a felony under Georgia law. Robert Patillo, a Georgia-based criminal law attorney, points out that the state statutes did not give the McMichaels the right to pursue Arbery. He also addresses another argument being made by those who wish to place blame on the young man. The anti-Arbery crowd claims that Travis McMichael was justified in shooting the young man because he grabbed McMichael's shotgun. They argue that Travis's actions constituted self-defense, even though the two men admitted they were attempting to corner Arbery while carrying guns. In the video, Patillo notes that you cannot create the situation and bring a gun into the situation and then claim defense when you have a posse of 3 people with you in pickups to stop an individual. According to the police report and the McMichael statements, they clearly initiated the incident that led to Arbery's death. Now that a special prosecutor has been appointed in the case, more details are likely to emerge regarding the shooting. Moreover, Glynn County's law enforcement will be under further scrutiny due to the handling of this case. Despite the myths being circulated by those with a particular agenda, the truth is sure to come out. The question is, will this man and his family receive justice? And Jeff asks you to leave your thoughts in the comments below. This is called the definitive debunking of the lies surrounding the Ahmaud Arbery shooting. It's available on Red State. It's by Jeff Charles. So you can just Google all that. Jeff makes an excellent case. He has laid out every detail with impossible precision, and there is no way that upon looking, if the argument here is that he was the aggressor, I have real questions about how you're viewing the difference between black people and white people. 3 white men with guns cornered this young man, whatever he was doing, whoever he was before that moment. And what if he was a bad person? Are we not allowed to make mistakes in our life, to have youthful indiscretions, to be, to maybe not always have the best intentions in our youth? Do we deserve to die by the hands of strangers for those decisions? I mean, even if he wasn't an angel, which I certainly don't think he was, no young man is an angel. Come on, moms, honestly, if you think that your son is an angel and does not make very poor decisions when he is away from you that you would be ashamed of and embarrassed of, then you're part of the problem. No, our sons are not angels. They can be good boys. They can be responsible, but at some point they all make a dumb decision because most of them at that age, they don't think with their brains. You know what I'm saying? That's not where all the blood is going. So we know that they make poor decisions. Why do his poor decisions have to reflect on the justice that he gets? We're all supposed to have access to the same type of justice. The McMichaels are getting their due process now, and he didn't get that chance. So I don't understand the relevance of this argument about who he was before the moment of the shooting or where he was or what he was doing. There's no proof anywhere that he did anything to anybody. There's no proof anywhere that he did anything to anybody. And I don't care if he was jogging or running. To me, it seemed very obvious he was jogging. I don't care if you think that he was too far away from his home to be jogging, or you don't know anything about that young man, what he was doing in the hours before, who he traveled with, who he talked to, who he texted, what his thoughts were. And I know a lot of y'all are like, I've seen some things on Facebook. People are like, well, why did the family erase all of his social media? Isn't it odd that he has no social media? You can't find his social media. Yeah. I have no friggin' doubt they erased all his social media. Do you know what kind of BS 20-year-old kids put on their social media? They're idiots. They don't know anything. We just went through this whole thing where, do you remember that kid who raised all that money for Budweiser? Like, he did a little fundraiser, and then Budweiser caught him on camera, and then Budweiser made him like the figurehead of this a really nice kid from Iowa, this white kid from Iowa. Really nice little story. He ended up raising or I think he's from St. Louis. He ended up raising another $1 million through charity, through this total fluke that made him kind of a local star. It was really cute. Well, this SJW reporter from the Des Moines Observer, or the Des Moines Register, did a story on him. And he couldn't just do the story. Well, he thought he was going to play Mr. Journalist, and he was going to dig up something on this guy. It was this white kid, this white middle-class kid. I bet he likes Trump. That was totally the tone of it, too. I'll stand by that. I bet he likes Trump. We better... Not knowing he's just a Midwest guy, so you just assume. A guy in flyover country, you must love Trump. And he must be an idiot, too. So he dug into his tweets. This guy, I think at the time of this story, was 25. And he found a tweet from when he was 16 years old and made he quoted a joke from The Office or Friends when he was 16 years old. And it was a joke that was racially insensitive. And he retweeted that joke. This journalist thought it was relevant to include that tweet from when he was 16 years old, a tweet about a show that he liked, and he laughed at this joke, for better or for worse. He included that tweet in the story as if to say, look, this kid's got problems, though. We can't really make a hero out of him. He's got some problems in his past. Well, that story blew up. He ended up getting fired for that, which is good for him. Not the kid, but the reporter. He should have been fired. That was absolutely uncalled for. And conservatives far and wide lost their damn minds over it. How could you can't judge a person on what they do at 16, what they say at 16. You can't hold him responsible for that. Look at all the good he did. This is ridiculous. This is just, it's cherry picking outrage. Now a lot of those people are the same people who are saying, well, this kid, he brought a gun to a playground 7 years ago. So he probably wasn't that good in the first place. Well, this kid, a few months ago, we may have seen him in that same building looking around. Do you see what I'm saying about the perception? How we perceive things? It seems perfectly fine for you to judge this black kid as that. But the white kid he really wasn't doing anything wrong. And he gets pegged by this terribly progressive, cranky attitude of we got to find something wrong with everybody, and that wasn't fair. I'm just asking you to apply your logic evenly here. Black people don't always get that benefit of the doubt. The other reason why I think white conservatives particularly, and I don't mean to beat up on you all. I'm not talking about you, of course, not you, the listener. Because if you listen to this show, you're already one of the most intelligent and most compassionate people on the face of the planet. Obviously, I'm not talking about JLTY listeners, but the royal you, whatever, you out there. White conservatives, I think another reason why they feel so compelled to dig in on narratives like this is because they feel accused themselves. And I don't think that that's without merit, because white people, particularly white conservatives, get saddled with the problems of everything to do with race in this country. And most of them are just normal, regular people who live regular lives, and they know they're not these people. They know they don't live their lives like this. They know they've helped their neighbors and adopted kids and given to charities, and they know that they don't think this way, and yet they're asked to be responsible for things that happened thousands of years ago, hundreds of years ago. They're asked to be responsible for a racial event in Pennsylvania when they live in Texas. And so I think a lot of them feel oversensitive. And I don't think that that's necessarily wrong. I think that's fair, to feel a little defensive. I absolutely do. We blame white people for too much. Sorry. Again, I'm trying to speak the language here. I'm trying to say not everything is someone's fault because of how they look, right, white people? It's not fair. It's not fair to be saddled with an attitude or an accusation just because of the color of your skin. And so I think a lot of white conservatives feel accused. And what happens is the very notion of racism makes them feel accused. They have to overcorrect. So we've got to deny that racism exists, because to even admit that it exists is to accuse myself. And that's not, and that's not fair. And it's not fair. It isn't. So I think a lot of people feel invested in digging in and pushing back against that narrative because they feel accused. And I just want you to know, I don't accuse you. You didn't shoot Ahmaud Arbery. I wrote an article about it at Red State. You can look it up. You didn't shoot Ahmaud Arbery. This is not your fault. There are three men, but two men in particular who will answer to this and should answer to this. And we should all want justice for this. This is an easy one. This really is an easy one. You don't even have to like this kid. You don't even have to think you can even think that these guys were right to hunt this kid down and follow him. Like maybe you're thinking, hey, I would do the same thing if I thought that this was a person who was causing me all this trouble and it was making me upset. Maybe I'd do the same thing. I mean, you can even think like that. But I think this is an easy case for justice. It's easy. He didn't deserve to die. He didn't deserve to be confronted by 3 strangers. He didn't deserve to be cornered like an animal without any due process. They didn't file a report. They didn't go to the police and say, hey, we suspect this guy. What else was he supposed to do? What was he supposed to do? Are you saying what do you think would have saved his life? Do you think if he had put his hands up? Do you think that if he had stopped? You've seen these guys now. You've seen the McMichaels and you've seen the video. Do you think that if he had stopped, turned around, put his hands up in the air and said, I don't know who you are, sir, but you're white and I'm black and it's my job to stand here until you figure out what's going on with me. If he had turned around and said that, do you think that the McMichaels were going to peacefully handcuff him and take him down the station? Is that what you think was going to happen? We've been talking a lot about the moment before. What about the moment after? What was going to happen if that young man stopped and put up his hands and just gave in to this concept that you're just, as a black person, supposed to stop what white people tell you to? Let's put some thought into it. Honest to God, when we were going through the Trayvon Martin stuff and the Michael Brown stuff, it was really hard to wade into those discussions because I actually had feelings on both sides of that fence. I understood the anger that was coming out of the black community, and it was genuine. But I also understood that there were law enforcement issues, that there was stuff on the part of law enforcement that they did right. And there were some lies being told, and there were lots of questions to ask about the investigation. And the Trayvon Martin case had issues too. So even if I didn't agree with people, it's like, okay, I can agree with you that there's some ambiguous areas here. There's definitely room for wiggle. There's definitely some other questions to be asked. We shouldn't be flying off the handle. We should be really getting to the truth. I I get that. So I get that you might have questions about this that might lead you to a different conclusion than what I see. I do find it rather fantastical having seen the video myself, but I'm willing to give you that benefit of the doubt because I'm arguing with you in good faith. I'm not assuming you're a racist. I'm arguing with you in good faith. But regardless, it should be really easy to get on the side of getting justice for this young man. And maybe you think that justice means the McMichaels get their day in court and they go free, but shouldn't the McMichaels have a day in court? Shouldn't they have always had a day in court? Shouldn't that have been, if this young man was your son, would you just be happy? Would you look at that video? If this young man was your son, would you look at that video and you look at those guys with those guns and you look at your son fighting for his life, fighting for that weapon? Do you mean to tell you that you would be perfectly fine with the idea that those three men went home that night and lived freely and happily in anonymity for months following? Are you telling me that you'd be okay with that? Don't try to make this something that it's not. It doesn't have to be a huge indictment of white people. It can just be an issue of justice, of somebody's son being killed and the circumstances are suspicious and the whole family getting their due process. And I know a lot of you, I read this whole article the other day. The whole article was just about who's representing the Arbery family. It's just the race hustlers. Sean King swooped in. He's a hustler. Jesse Jackson's got his lawyers all over it. This lawyer that represented Al Sharpton's group, he's got his fingers all in this pie. See, none of these people have good intentions. We already know they're going to start telling lies. We already know that there's going to be a narrative. Well, what conservative groups stepped up for the Arbery family? Can you name any? I mean, I'll wait. I don't know how long I can wait because we're not really talking. This is just a podcast. But which conservative liberty group or conservative group that really wades into subjects like this, which group offered them help? Which conservative lawyer, which civil liberties lawyer on the right offered help? Do you know? Don't get mad at them because they took the help that was offered to them. They took the help that was offered to them. This is the other problem that a lot of black people have with, quote, the black conservative movement, or more in particular, the GOP outreach to, or lack thereof, to the black community. There's no boots on the ground. You want to lecture people. It's easier to lecture people and tell them how to live. Why is your unwed birth rate so high? And you guys are so conservative. It doesn't make sense. Why is so much of the population on welfare? Why is the teenage pregnancy rate this? Or why is the black on black crime statistic this high? Or poverty rates that high? You want to be asking these people questions, but you don't want to be knowing how they live. You don't want to be asking about how they live. You don't want to know about how they live. I didn't mean to get too flat there. Sorry. You don't want to know their circumstances, their lives. Reach into where they are at that moment and walk those streets with them for a little bit. It's like we can do this thing where we do outreach, we hold a political rally, vote for Trump. But what about the families in these communities who never get justice for their kids because the police kind of look at these cases and say, well, this is just a gangbang. We're never going to solve it. There are so many invisible kids, black kids on the streets of this country who have died and disappeared and have never received justice because they're not the cute little blonde girl that got kidnapped that makes the evening news. Or the police on the south side of Chicago don't care if just another 19-year-old gangbanger goes missing. What does that matter to them? It's just collateral damage. You know what? Where are the conservative groups that are going into these communities and saying, let me help you get justice? That's where you'd be the most influenced. Don't criticize the left and the progressives because they came in and do the work that you should be doing. Why didn't any conservatives step up for the Arbery family? Instead, half of white conservatives, not half, that's hyperbole. I'm just being dramatic, but a lot of white conservatives stood up and said and immediately defended the shooters. So, don't criticize this family for the help they took. Maybe it's time for conservative organizations to start thinking about getting in on the ground and offering some help where it matters to these people and not offering with strings attached. We'll give you this help, but you should vote Republican. Some of these people may never vote the way you want them to. People are funny like that, right? Not just black people, people. People are funny like that. We don't like to be told what to do all the time. We don't like to be treated like babies. What if conservative organizations went in there and said, we just want to serve? Like that guy, Scott Pressler, who goes around cleaning up communities. Be like that guy. He goes around, he doesn't ask for anything. He, instead of this whole thing where we sling mud at each other because, well, your community looks like crap. So don't talk to us about how we're supposed to be living our lives, and you can't even get your act together in your own community. Well, Scott goes in there and says, we're not waiting for the government to do this. Everyone deserves a clean street to live on. I've got trash bags and I've got manpower. Let's do it. That's service. We need more people like that. We don't need more talking heads. I mean, except me. You guys, we need me. I like my job. I'm going to keep my job. No more, though. No more talking heads. I think I've gone on long enough with this. I would love to know your thoughts on on this case and where you stand. Don't be afraid. I'm not going to judge you. As you know, if you listen to this show, I always think that all ideas should be presented, the good and the bad, the offensive and the non-offensive. You can't offend me. So if you have a point of view, I might disagree with it, and I might disagree with it passionately, but I'm not going to judge you. You all know how I feel about this. You can't even respond to a bad idea if you're not allowed to hear it in the first place. So give me your good ideas. Give me your bad ideas. You can email me at kiradavis@422@gmail.com. That's kiradavis422@gmail.com. Did I say that right? kiradavis@422@gmail.com. I am no longer buzzed from the window shop, by the way. I've talked my way out of that, but now I'm just tired of talking. So you can follow me on Twitter at realkiradavis. As always, please give me a rating and review on whatever platform you're watching this on. It helps us so much. Thank you so much for tuning in. Join us next week. And until then, don't forget, every now and then, just stop and listen to yourself.